Welcome to the Soulful Success Podcast, where we're redefining what it means to live, lead, and succeed. I'm Kyle Diot, a mentor and guide for visionaries and conscious creators who are ready to bridge personal growth, spiritual depth, and practical success. Each week, I'll share honest conversations and grounded insights to help you elevate your life, not by doing more, but by becoming more of who you truly are. This is where ambition meets alignment, and where the next evolution of success begins. Welcome to Soulful Success. You've had people in your corner, people who care about you, who show up, who listen. Maybe you've had coaching, maybe therapy, maybe both. And still, there are things you're carrying that have never quite been met. Not because the people weren't good, not because you didn't try, but because there's a difference between someone giving you advice and someone actually witnessing you. Most people have had a lot of the first one and not enough or even any of the second. That's what I want to sit with today. Most people have had a lot of advice in their lives and are still carrying things alone. Some of you listening have worked with coaches. Some of you have even worked with therapists or been in therapy, and maybe you've had both, and maybe more than once. And of course, there's some of you who haven't had either. You've just relied on the people around you, friends, colleagues, people who care. Wherever you've been, you know what it looks like to reach out because you've done it. And in some of those conversations, it has helped. Practically in the moment, you may have left with something to think about, something to try, a perspective that you hadn't considered. But there are things that you've brought to these people, things with real weight, that left the conversation still unresolved, still yours to carry, still untouched. And so afterward, there's a particular feeling, like why did I even bring this up? I'm still dealing with this. They just didn't quite get it. And sometimes in these conversations, they drift. And, sometimes it can become about the other person. Sometimes you get advice when it really wasn't what you needed. Sometimes the person listened, but only to the surface of what you said. They heard the words, but not what was underneath them. And so you left still holding the thing that you came in with. And over time, without really deciding to, you started to hold more of it yourself. Not because you stopped needing connection, but because reaching out just kept disappointing, not giving you what you needed. And it's worth naming that reaching out isn't easy for everyone. For some, it comes naturally. For others, it's already a difficult task and a risk, because a vulnerability that doesn't feel entirely safe. But regardless of where you are, where you start, when you reach out and you don't receive what you actually need, the next reach becomes even harder. There's a threshold that rises, so you start editing before you even open your mouth, deciding what's shareable and what isn't, based on what you've learned and those conversations can hold. And so there's a cost to that editing as well, because the thing that you decided not to bring is still there. It's still yours to carry. So through the editing, we're protecting ourselves from sharing what needs to be shared. And so when you reach out and you don't receive what you need, it doesn't just leave the thing unresolved, it adds another layer. So there's the original weight, plus the disappointment of having tried and not being heard and seen and getting what you really needed out of the interaction. And so that adds a layer quietly, reinforcing that the pattern of most high achievers already know. It's easier just to handle it yourself. And so a loop develops. Carry it alone, reach out, not be met, carry it alone again. And each time around, the loop gets a little bit harder to break. The problem isn't the people that you've been bringing this to. It's that you've been bringing it to the container that was never meant to hold it. When the conversation doesn't land, the easiest conclusion that something is wrong with the people in your life. They don't get it. They make it about themselves. They jump to advice. They say the right things but miss what's actually going on. And some of that might be true. But the deeper issue isn't the people, it's the container. A friend who cares about you is not the same as someone who is equipped to hold what you're carrying. Those are two completely different things, and most people spend their lives confusing one for the other. The people in your life are doing the best that they can with what they have. But what they have is shaped by their own experience, their own unresolved things, their own way of seeing the world. And when they offer advice, they're not offering you a neutral perspective, they're offering a filtered one. Their biases, their fears, their conclusions about how things work. And that filter is invisible to both of you in the moment. So, what you receive isn't just advice, it's advice shaped by someone else's story. And it may have nothing to do with what you actually need or what you're carrying. And usually, when you receive the advice, it comes as tools, strategies, next steps, something to take away and apply, something actionable. And that can feel like help in the moment, but you leave with something to work with. The problem isn't the tool, it's a tool that addresses the surface of what you brought, not the weight underneath it. You can implement everything you were given and still feel like the real thing was never actually touched. What happens in most conversations is this. Someone listens enough to hear you at the surface level. They catch the shape of what you're saying enough to know what to hand back to you, but they don't go deeper. They don't follow the layers down. And that's the thing that's actually going on underneath that never gets resolved or touched, and that's really what you're looking for in the moment. And then they'll start with maybe advice. Even well-intentioned advice, it closes the conversation down right at the moment it needed to stay open. And then there's also something else that happens with advice when it doesn't fit. A wall goes up. Not because you're being difficult, but because something in you knows that's not what was needed in the moment. And now you're managing that too, on top of the thing you came in carrying. For people who already find it hard to ask for help, this is the moment that confirms what they suspected. They took the risk, it didn't land, and now they have more to carry than what they even started with. The conversations that don't land don't just fail to help, they make you feel smaller for even trying. And this isn't a people problem, it's a container problem. The people in your life aren't failing you, they just aren't equipped for this. And that's a different thing entirely. Being witnessed is different from receiving advice, and most high achievers have never actually had it. There's a specific kind of space that requires skill and not just care. Most people have never been inside it, and not because it doesn't exist, but because they've never been in a container built for it. What it looks like for them inside is unlike anything most conversations offer. There's no advice coming. There's no reframe being prepared while you're still talking. No filter of someone else's experience being placed over yours. Instead, there's curiosity. Genuine, unhurried curiosity about what's actually going on. Not just what you've said, but what's underneath it. What you haven't found words for yet. In this space, the questions land differently. They open up things rather than close them down. They follow the layers down rather than staying at the top of them. And you find yourself going places in the conversation you didn't expect. Not because you were directed there, but because the space made it safe to do so. There's no identity to protect in this container either. No version of yourself to maintain. You don't have to arrive composed or make the problem digestible for you to bring it. You can just show up with the full weight of it, unedited, unresolved. And that's exactly what the space is built for. And when you're in this environment, something shifts. I've watched it happen, I've seen it, it happens a lot. There's a subtle energy change, a loosening. Something that had been held tight starts to open. People begin to go places in themselves they haven't gone before. Not because they were pushed there, but because for the first time, they felt safe enough to do so. And what comes out of that space is curious, reflective, sometimes relieved. And what gets found there stays, because it came from them. No one handed it to them, which means no one can take it away. The container changes what's possible inside of it. You don't arrive differently, the space draws something different out of you. And the first time it happens, the first time you're genuinely witnessed, it's a specific kind of feeling. Reassuring, validating. Like something in you finally relaxes that has been braced for such a long time. Like you found someone who actually sees you, not the capable, composed version, but you. And being seen like that quietly gives you permission to be more fully yourself, not just in that conversation, but over time. Being witnessed isn't someone taking the weight from you. It's not having to carry it alone anymore, and knowing that what surfaces belongs entirely to you. When you finally experience being witnessed, it doesn't just resolve what you brought, it changes your relationship with yourself. There's something that happens the first time you're in a space that's actually built for what you're carrying. It can be disorienting before it's relieving, because it doesn't match what you were prepared for. The absence of advice, the absence of being redirected, it does catch you off guard. But then something settles, and not because the thing you brought disappeared, but because it finally got to exist somewhere outside of you, with someone who could be with it and with you without needing to fix it. And what comes out of that space is entirely yours. You didn't receive an answer, you found one. That's a different experience, and it leaves a different imprint. When someone creates the conditions for you to source your own answers rather than handing you a solution, something in your relationship with yourself shifts. You start to trust that you know things, that you can move through things, that you don't always need someone else to tell you what's true for you. And that's not a small thing. For someone who has spent years carrying it alone, or reaching out and not being met, or editing themselves before they even open their mouth, the experience of being the one who knows in a space built for it is where self-trust actually gets built. Not as a concept, but as something lived. As you continue to show up in this container for yourself, the loop will start to break. Not through willpower, not through choosing better people to bring things to, but because the alternative finally exists and you've felt what it's like to be inside it. Being witnessed doesn't just resolve the thing you brought, it returns you to yourself, and from that place, you start to move through the world differently. You begin to live from your own authority, your own knowing, not because someone gave you the answers, but because you finally had somewhere that you trusted to go to find them. And that's what changes when the container is right, not the conversation, just you. Now remember, most people in your life will continue to offer what they know how to offer. And that's not a failure, it's just what it is. They care, they're trying, and there's a place for those conversations. But there are things that you've been carrying that were never meant to be there in the first place. Things that needed a different kind of space. One built for the full weight of what you brought, not just the surface of it. And you've known for a while. Maybe you just couldn't name it before. Maybe you just knew something was still there after every conversation, every time you reached out and walked away still holding it. And that's not a reflection on the people in your life. It's information about what you actually need. And what you need isn't more advice. It's somewhere where you can arrive as you actually are, unedited, unresolved, and to be fully witnessed in it. You don't need people who care more. You need a space that's actually built for what you're carrying. And when you find it, you'll finally understand what's been missing. If something in this episode landed, if you recognize yourself in the loop of reaching out and walking away still carrying it, a human design integration session might be the next right step. It's not another layer of advice. It's a conversation where your actual experience takes the lead, where your design gets to be explored through what you're actually living, not handed back to you as a framework. If you've been wanting somewhere that's built for the real weight of what you're carrying, this might be where it starts. The link is in the show notes. I hope you have an amazing day. Before you go, I want to invite you to slow down for a moment and notice what stood out for you in this episode. There's nothing to do with it, no insight to apply, no conclusion to reach. Just notice what stayed with you. A phrase, a feeling, or a moment that felt familiar in your body. Sometimes the most important shifts don't happen through action, but through allowing something to be seen and felt. Thanks for taking this time for yourself. I'll see you next time.